I am Lindsay O'Brien. Just a little intro on me. I am the marketing manager at Lockstep, and I work closely with our customers on our adoption program. So our adoption program helps our customers to implement AR automation best practices in a way that drives adoption among their customers, and that accelerates their digital transformation. So ensuring that their customers are taking advantage of all the online tools that are available to them to make their payments online. And these best practices are based in using evidence that we found from customer analysis, hosting roundtable discussions, AR reporting and surveying, and then benchmarking our customers' key metrics over time. So today I'll be sharing what we've learned through our analysis and a lot of the best practices that we share with our customers to help drive their digital adoption. So on the agenda today, we have just a really brief overview of Lockstep and Lockstep Collect, the one tool that you need to get communications to your customers, and then the best practices that you can use in your collections emails, and how to get customers to take that final action on your emails to make payment. So Lockstep Collect helps companies, in a nutshell, collect cash faster. It's a cloud-based solution. So it is available online, and then it integrates into your ERP system. It allows you to do automated customer and contact data management. It allows for automated customer communication, so that's your email AR automation. It gives your customers self-service, so those online tools allowing them to make payment, do disputes, access documents, all through an online portal. Collections activity management, so keeping an eye on what the team is up to, understanding and knowing where accounts are at, and then being able to coach your team to improve their collections activities. And then finally, forecasting and reporting on key metrics and cash flow. And we serve really great brands. You can see on the right hand of the screen some of those brands that you might recognize. But we have over 180 customers, and we have more than 10,000 users in the application and portal daily. And then we're also the leader in ERP integration. So our integration platform has the most number of connectors in the industry, and we're adding new integrations every month. You might recognize your ERP system in some of the logos that we have up on the screen now as well. So the case for email automation. When the pandemic hit, Deloitte did a survey among CFOs to sort of see where things are at. And they found that over 50% of CFOs said that their most important role has been managing cash and liquidity. And that's because the cheapest form of cash comes from customers rather than financial institutions. And in order to access this cash flow, you have to streamline collections. And that's become one of their highest priorities. And the pandemic has also exposed paper as a cash trap. So it's kind of hard to believe that so much of invoicing and collections is still done on paper. It's hard to believe because we're using our iPhones daily, we're using our computers. I mean, you can even, sign documents over DocuSign online, and you don't even have to, use your real signature anymore. But almost 40% of all invoices are paper. And we actually spoke with an analyst recently who said that the US was actually closer to more like 50% paper-based invoicing. And it's slow. Paper-based invoicing is slow because you're having to go through the Postal Service. And we've found over the last couple of months that the Postal Service is slower than usual. I mean, personally for me, I received some of my Christmas cards from friends and families like January 15th. So weeks after Christmas actually occurred is when I actually received those things. So that means that your invoices are being received later as well. It's expensive. So, the cost of postage, envelopes, ink from printers. And then it's also time consuming. In order to print these documents and send them to your customers, somebody has to be there to do the actual printing, to stuff those envelopes. And the reality is that if you're using paper invoicing, you're also likely getting a paper check back from your customers. It's a cash trap. It's limiting the amount of time that your collectors can be doing other more important activities. And by eliminating paper, it improves your cash flow. So it's now a priority to be replacing paper with email. So we're going to stop for a second to do one of those poll questions that Whitney talked about. And we just want to know what percentage of your invoices are sent as paper.
So far, it looks like it's pretty mixed, but the majority with 60% being 0 to 10% sent as paper, which is a little higher than we typically see. And then everyone else falls into the 10 to 40% or more percentage. So thank you, everyone.
Great. So since there are a lot of people on this call that are, I'm assuming using, email or something like that as opposed to paper, we also wanted to talk about email and how email is actually a cash trap too. It still has its limitations, and simply moving invoices to email doesn't solve the problem. So a lot of accounting departments, like a lot of people on this call, I assume, are using Outlook and Excel for their technology stack. And that creates a lot of manual work. With no integration to the ERP system, it means data is constantly being manually transcribed between emails in the ERP system or back from the ERP system into emails. And with no automation, it means that your follow-ups, your promise tracking, your dispute resolution is all manual as well. And then with no activity management, there's no visibility into what has been done and what the team is working on. That becomes very hard to control when it's all siloed in Outlook and Excel. And the typical accounting department and collections look similar to what's being shared on the screen now. So there's some sort of shared inbox. There might be an alias like accounts receivable at company.com. And then individual people are working out of their personal inboxes. So they're grabbing something from that shared inbox and they start to work it that way. We interviewed over 900 companies with surveys, and we found that over 90% of them are using something like this to manage their collections. They're using Outlook and Excel, personal inboxes, they're using spreadsheets in order to track things. And then once an email is sent from that personal inbox, the conversation is sort of sucked into this information black hole. If that person is out of the office or they're busy on another project, the conversation ends up stalling because nobody else knows where that conversation is at. It's stuck in that personal inbox. It's not visible to others on the team. And then the manual composition and addressing and sending of these emails ends up being a bottleneck. There's only so many emails that can be sent manually by someone in a day. And then what if that person leaves the company, or maybe they're on vacation? Requests and communications to that email address create cracks into which customer communications fall. And then finally, all of these things combined end up creating this environment of dealing with escalation. So more and more fire drills are created by the bottlenecks and the information black holes. So we're going to do our last poll question that we're going to ask of you. What do you use to process your emails? So our options, we have Outlook or Gmail, support desk software, maybe something like Zendesk, an AR automation solution, or some other form, maybe a CRM or something like that.
So this one looks like the majority. I think there's still a few more that can come in, but the majority, 90% use Outlook and Gmail, and then we have around 10% using a support desk software.
And that's, falls right in line with what we were just talking about. 90% of the ones that we, companies that we surveyed before also said the same thing, that they're using Outlook and Gmail to process their emails. So imagine if marketing used Outlook and Excel to invite you to this webinar. So I'd like you to take a moment to imagine if Whitney had not used software to invite you to this webinar. So first, she would have had to promote it to you, meaning she would be manually composing, addressing, and sending thousands of emails. And that's not just one email, just like it doesn't take just one email to get someone to pay you. She has to send, reminders. Maybe it takes 3 invites for you to finally click on it and sign up. Then you would be responding to that email to Whitney, and she would have to read these and manually enter in if you said that you would like to join the webinar or if you said that you don't want to join the webinar, and keep track of what everybody's responses are. Then she'd have to confirm that with you. So she would have to reply back to you with the event information and maybe the link to join the webinar. Next, she'd have to remind you to come to the webinar. So right before the webinar, you might have noticed that you received an email from us reminding you, 24 hours before our set time for the webinar to make sure that you join it. And then finally, she would have to manually compose the follow-up. So sending out, like she said at the beginning of the webinar, you're going to receive a link to the recording of the webinar. She would then have to go through, find out who actually attended and who she's going to send that link to. And that would be a lot of work with a lot less results. Creating emails for webinars isn't all Whitney does, and it's not all she's capable of either. And so if she was going to spend all of her time manually setting up this webinar, it could take up all of her work time. But if you look at the fact that across the customer journey, marketing doesn't work this way. Marketing uses something like MailChimp or Marketo as a marketing automation solution. Sales has Salesforce, so they can automate a lot of their key activities. Support has Zendesk, because they're able to automatically send product announcements, reminders, all kinds of different things. But then you get to accounting, and all we have is Outlook. Accounting really is a customer-facing operation, just like sales or marketing. And we should be thinking about how we can scale up the right communications at the right time, just like all the other customer-facing organizations do, allowing you to be more strategic, like Whitney has the time to be, because she is able to automate this webinar promotion. So we do benchmarks with our customers, looking at their key metrics prior to going live with our AR automation solution. And then 6 months down the line. So what do those same metrics look like once they've implemented Lockstep Collect? And what you see on the screen now is one of the things that we track. So it's in the case of them using no automation, referring to not utilizing any type of automated customer communications, such as reminders, statements, past due notices. And when we compared pre and post implementation of automation and looked at companies not using the automation, the average days delinquent was around 39 days. But then when automation is enabled, the average days delinquent dropped to 18. So that's over a 53% improvement. And not only did this increase cash flow, but it freed up a ton of staff time to focus on more priority activities, such as disputes, or how do we create more white glove service for our customers. All of those types of things can be done because staff time has been freed up from doing manual, mundane activities instead of focusing on these priorities. So now we're going to get into some of those best practices that you can put into your emails to ensure that your customers are receiving and taking action on them. And the first is bad contact data, which is the #1 barrier to email automation. So do you have all your customers' AP department emails? If you've been in business for 20, 30 years, many of your processes were initially based on physical paper. And Momentum has just kept it that way. But when we engage with companies in creating online account access for them, part of that adoption services, there's about 90% of the accounts that have no email address as part of their contact data. So not only might they be missing the email, but the contact email could be invalid. So maybe the person left the company or their domain name changed, meaning that even if you have the email, it's not getting delivered. Then the contact email might be the wrong address. So you might have the buyer, the person that purchased from you, but you don't have the accounting contact. And in a lot of cases, if the buyer receives an invoice in their email, they don't forward it along because they assume that you have the right contact and they're just, being added on to the communications. So then it's just ending there with the buyer. And then you might have a contact email that is a personal address, not a role-based email. So it's getting siloed in this one person's inbox, and they could be on vacation, or they could no longer be with the company. So it's just getting lost there. And all of these issues create incorrect data, which slows down your cash flow. So here are 3 steps to correct the contact data and lower your DSO. The first thing and these are all steps that we take with our customers with our adoption services. So we've kind of fleshed these out to be best practices on how you can correct your contact data. And the first step is to harvest email address to fill in those missing addresses. So this is having a process where you make sure every account has a proper email address. And we have an example of this with one of the customers that I was speaking to recently, where they created a process that on every single touch that they have with a customer, they make sure to talk with the customer and have the correct email addresses. They verify that, that they have an email address for each account every single time they speak with them. So recently they actually moved locations and they got a new office building. And so they knew that they were going to be sending out communications to their customers just to inform them of this new location. And they included on that letter, you know, if you have a new email address, please email us and update your contact information. So they are just building that in and baking it into their process. And then verifying that the existing email address are valid and fix the invalid ones. So one tool that we use is called Bright Verify, and it's to verify an email address. It costs a penny an email address, so it's very low cost. And you just upload a list of all of those emails, and it will shoot back at you which ones are valid and which ones bounce back and are invalid, which then allows you to verify correctness. So verifying that your email addresses are going to the designated AP inbox. So then once you know that you have the correct contact data, the next hurdle that you kind of have to get over is making sure that they're not getting stuck in spam. 69% of email recipients report that email as spam based solely on the subject line. So what you're putting in your subject lines could be sending that email into their spam folders. And a lot of these trigger words, as you can see on the screen now, are common words that we're using in accounting and AR every day. So we're using dollar signs, we're talking about money or cash or checks. And so you have to get a little bit more creative on what these subject lines could be that are going to avoid these words that are going to immediately mark your emails as spam. Another tactic you have to think about is the preview text. So subject lines aren't the only way that can grab your customer's attention. There's also the preview text that you can see here on the screen. We have the subject line, which is reminder your invoice is past due, but then we give them additional information on what the email is about, why it's valuable or important, and what action they should be taking. So we're letting them know that this is an invoice from our company and that it's 10 days past due, and we're asking them to take action to pay. And they know all of this before even opening the email. So that's why they found in studies that including preview text increases the chances of somebody opening your email by 30%. And that's because you're giving them everything that they need to know before they even click into the email. And then it's important to consider personalization. So studies have shown that customers are more likely to interact with an email if there's personalization. And you can see some statistics up on the screen now about the open rates of personalization and how it's more likely for them to open because of personalization. And that's because with personalization, the customer, it's made clear to them that this email is meant for them, it's meant for them to open, and it's relevant to them. And some ways that you can use personalization, you can see an example on the screen of an email where you're personalizing it with their first name, and then you have information relevant to the aging of the invoice. So when is it due? What's the invoice amount due for? This is all information that tells them exactly what they need to know to take action, giving them that clear action to take of the view invoice. And they have all the information available to them to be able to make that payment immediately. They don't need to call you and ask for more information. And then also what the tonality is of that email you can personalize. So we obviously don't want to be sending an email to somebody who's only a few days past due or who only has a few days before their invoice is due with like really aggressive wording. We also, can use some friendlier wording for someone who is just getting a reminder. So you have to be aware of where they are in the process of aging before you send an email that, has a certain tone. And then you can also be considering the visual. So, if we go back to this email, it's really visually appealing. It's really easy for them to read. Everything is pretty clear. There's no difference in the fonts or the colors that is used in the email. And the reason for that is because 60% of people find it unacceptable for an irregularity in fonts. Irregularity in fonts is typically associated with a fraudulent email. It's spam. It's somebody that's trying to steal your bank account information. So if you have sort of crazy fonts going on, people just aren't going to trust it, and they're especially not going to be clicking on a link to, put in their account information. And then you have to be considering timing and frequency. So if you're not timing your emails correctly, your email could be simply getting lost in the mix and being left to sit unopened for days. So consider where your customer is located. Are they located on the West Coast and you're located on the East Coast? If you're sending that email first thing in the morning and they haven't even gotten to their inbox yet, it's probably going to be stuck in, that mass amount of email that they're trying to get through from the night before. Same thing with if you're sending it. We typically try not to send any emails on a Monday or Friday because it's likely that those are the days that somebody is going to take off for a long weekend. And then by Monday or Tuesday comes, they're trying to get through hundreds of emails that they got from the days that they were out, and you sort of get stuck at the bottom of that wait list. And then how often are you reaching out to them? Are you not reaching out to them enough? But consequently, are you reaching out to them too much? When should that automation be put on pause? If they clicked on your link and they're in your portal and it looks like they're going to make payment, then you shouldn't keep sending them more reminders to pay. They're already on it. They're going to do it, and you're just going to kind of start to annoy them. So now that we've verified that we have the right email addresses, we have it in their inbox, we've gotten them to open it. How do we get them to take action, which is most important? How do we get them to pay? And the one thing that we use is what we call magic links. Magic links are like a one-time password to use an application or access information. It's a secure hyperlink inside the email, and it lets your customers access the information in the portal, such as their documents, statements, invoices, make payments, but it doesn't make them put a password in. So since it's a one-time use link, it's just as secure as using a password, but you don't have to, as the collector, manage those passwords, and they don't have to remember another one. And then once they've clicked that link, you can see the actions that they've taken. So have they downloaded the invoice? Have they interacted with it? And that's a very important part, to be able to say, yes, they're in the process of making a payment. I know that this payment is going to come in and it's going to affect my cash flow. And remember that accounts payable, as your counterpart, they have a responsibility to make sure that their books are up to date. That's important to them because they don't want to fail their audits. So they have to have accurate reporting for their executives to know that they are processing your invoices. And that'll give you visibility in the fact that they are indeed staying on time on paying you. And they also tend to have very specific days payable outstanding, which is a certain policy that they want to make sure everything gets paid. So maybe they always pay 10 days late and you do net 30. So then you know for sure that they will pay you at 40 days. And knowing that and knowing what their process is really important. So this is just a look inside of that portal on where they can make payments, make disputes, promise to pay, download their attachments, all from just clicking on that link. So we talked through a few things today, and one is this digital transformation journey that people are on. So definitely replacing paper with email communications is critical. Then you're also thinking about what is the software you're using around these emails? How do you really replace these personal inboxes with email automation and a shared workspace for team access? And then we talked about really changing behavior is about getting rid of attachments and providing online access through something like magic links. And that's the digital journey that you and your customers can take to ensure you're getting paid on time. So you can start that digital transformation now just by visiting lockstep.io, and you can request a demo. We have tons of blogs that dive into this topic deeper, or looking at other topics like credit policies, some more email templates that you can use, and white papers and call scripts and videos. So with that, we can open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to go ahead and launch one more poll while we wait for some questions to come in. I did have a couple come in while you were going. So one of those was, how do you collect emails from customers when you don't have the emails, so they have a missing email address?
Yeah, so kind of some of that we talked about before with the examples of some of the things our customers did is, they created a campaign around gathering these email addresses. So with our adoption services, we help them to send letters out to their customers requesting that they start using email as their main form of communication and to contact them with their email address. We gave them, forms that they could fill out online to put that contact information in. So really treating it like a campaign, something where they needed to collect this information from their customers. We had one customer who ran this campaign, and they previously were sending out monthly statements, and they had to send out about 4,500 monthly statements. And so in order to get this done, since they were using paper, they had to have monthly folding parties where they actually gathered people from different areas of the company, whoever could volunteer. They'd order some pizza, and they would sit and fold 4,500 monthly statements and stuff them in envelopes, which obviously is not a great use of people's time, super time consuming. So they started sending out letters with those monthly statements, informing them that they were going to move to an online first process, and they were able to collect 60% of their customers' email addresses that way.
Wow, that does sound terrible. All right, well, that looks like that's all the time we have, so I don't want to go over anymore, but I just want to say thank you, Lindsay, for an awesome webinar today. I think there was tons of information there, so I hope everyone learned something. And as Lindsay mentioned, feel free to reach out to us. And make sure to keep an eye out for that email with the recording in it. So thank you, everyone.